So I'm going to highlight in a brief capacity, I think, because we're a little behind already. I'm going to highlight some of these tools. Some of them are really straightforward, so I might skip over them, but the main ones I want to talk about are the top 6 here, from note to cloud call out. And because these are going to be important because they are text enabled. And I'll get to that in a second. So our first tool at the top is a note. Kind of looks like a sticky note. These are great for saving space on a plan sheet. Let's say you've got a prepackaged Word document with a bunch of comments in it that you always place on plans. You can go ahead and place a note and then paste your text into there and then just kind of leave it be. So the good thing about it is that when you click this X at the top, it'll disappear from your screen, but the text does not disappear. So if someone else in a session wants to see it, they can just hover over it and it'll pop up right there with all the comments that you placed in there without kind of crowding up the whole plan sheet with, fitting all this text on there. You could place it in a note and that'll be a quick way to get that on there. Moving to some other tools, the callouts are probably the best tool, and I would recommend, they're going to get 99% of your comment needs done since they allow you to point at a location. Says it's unsupported. Okay, so if you're in the read-only mode, these are going to be somewhat limited as far as what's in the tool chest, but the callout will still be available to you over here on the right side. Callout button. And I can kind of
licensed version, so I'm not sure why. Let me try.
Yeah, I should add a note. These are going to be, these are for DOT to be using in the fully licensed version.
Jonathan has a license, so I'm not sure why his isn't supported.
Yeah, it should be okay. There's some workarounds. Each of these will correspond, if you can learn the symbols, I guess, correspond to tools that are right over here for the most part. Text box, call out. So for callouts, we've given you 2 options. One of them has a white fill. So maybe I want to come over here and leave a comment to increase a drum quantity. An option. And let's say I need to point at multiple locations on a plan sheet. So we've got our 2 different bids here. I can right click on a call out and scroll down to add leader. I right click on it. I can click add leader and then it'll let me point my second leader over to that same spot in the other one. And then if you move that, yeah, there you go. Should allow you to point it in different locations. So call outs are going to be great wherever you need them. They're pointing at exactly what you're talking about, and that's really the whole goal of this is so you're not using 2 separate documents where there's stuff left up to interpretation. You're pointing directly at where you want to see a comment made. Text boxes are also pretty straightforward. When you click on that, you'll draw a square depending on what text you want to put. So that might be something like adding a few items, adding a few if and where directed items. Place that, and then whether it's the call out or the text box, you can auto size these to the text that you've placed by clicking Alt and Z. Alt Z will auto size your text box to keep things clean so it's not getting messy. The last text enabled one is the cloud call out. This one's going to be pretty useful because you can draw a shape around something that you want to make a comment on. So as I go, I'm clicking each of the corners in my shape. And then once I go to the beginning of it, it closes the shape and adds a cloud. And now I can add my call out box there. So I might say something like a small quantity of pavers might be damaged. I'm going to recommend that they switch that to some new pavers to get in there. Something like that, just an example. And now I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what we're going to really spend most of module 2 on, which is this markups list. You know, the reason that these top 6 are so important is because they carry the text that is placed. So there's no ambiguous line work. So some of the things in here have no text in there. It can kind of get a little messy when you're going through a full plan set and it has a lot of blanks. So whenever you're putting in a text comment, just make sure it's in one of these text-enabled markup types, and that'll be the top 6 here. That's just a little preview. Moving on here to the rest of the tools. I'm going to abbreviate this one quite a bit. I'm moving over to page 5. The pen is, allows you to do a freehand drawing. The lines will give you straight lines when you click twice. Pretty straightforward. Polyline is allows you to make like a custom line as you click along something. Rectangle allows you to make your straight shape however you want. And the cloud is the same as the cloud call out. You can click through to create a certain shape and it'll have that cloud line style, which is pretty popular in construction, I know. The next 2 tools down here are highlight and highlight box. Highlight box is basically just a rectangle that has a transparency, so you can still see the text behind it. And then the highlight, I definitely want to touch on this one. So you can see here, it's that marker shape. I have it here, and I can place, highlight there. But when I go over to the text, it turns into the text selection tool. And we've run into this a million times. When you go to highlight text, sometimes it can highlight everything on the page and really mess you up. So the way around that is when you click on the highlight, just make sure you hold control. So you go to highlight, hold control, and then it's back in that marker and you can highlight text without messing up everything on your sheet. That covers the generic tools, and I'll give you another preview of the markup tab. I'll go down to page 5 here. So all of these markups that I've just placed have no comment attached to them. If you were to turn it over to a designer or an LPA, it's up for them to interpret. So it's important that every single one of your text comments. Oh, did somebody just highlight everything? For your text comments, it's always important, that you use your text-enabled tool. So in this case, I'll use the cloud call out. So what does all this mean? I'm wondering why the curb ramp is being removed here. They've got that repair strip, and I'm requesting that they add a crosswalk and a curb ramp if it's feasible. So I'm going to close out of my markups tab there. The next tab, I'll get to these measurement tools in a sec. The sequence tool, I'm wondering if this was, I don't know if I put that highlight in, but no, I don't think I did. Oof. The sequence tool allows you to just count along a page, so that can be convenient for things like quantities. When you click on that, it starts as a 1, and you go to 2, 3, And that'll allow you to count along the page. So if you see over on the left now, I have my live count. I know that my next count number is going to be 4. So if you're trying to get a total of something on a sheet, number of inlets, number of trees being removed, you can use that tool as a pretty convenient way to count. When it comes to your default tools, as somebody said, some of the stuff was unavailable. If you're in read only, I don't think there's much customization for Review 21 for what you can do with your tools. But maybe you need to show something more specific than just these straight lines I've drawn. I'm going to bring you over to our Properties tab. That's the one that looks like a gear over on your left side. Go ahead and click that. And I'll click on this center line I drew here. So the first set of options is going to come up in the active toolbar at the top, where you can do things like change the color or change the line style. Maybe I want that to be a double line to denote my road center line. I could change the thickness of it, maybe get it down to a more accurate scale, especially if I want this markup to be, implemented as shown. On the Properties tab, you have a few more options for terminators, things like that. When you click on lines, you can also increase the thickness there. Maybe I want this one to look like a stop bar. Have them at a stop bar. Whoops. And as you go up the chain and go to more complicated markups for something like the rectangle, you can do things like add fill. Use that as a highlight so you can block or highlight so you can see behind it, or not. You can have it opaque to cover up. You can add hatching to it as well. You have a few options for that. Let's say I want to add some hatching there. And then all the way at the top of the chain, something like the cloud call out we pasted here. You can see here, this is the color of the cloud that I just changed to blue. Maybe the color of the box and the line of the call out, I could change it over to green. And then this is where I have my text options as well. So if I want some bigger text, I can set that. I could change the font color as well. Maybe change that to blue. I could do my bold, my italics, however I want. Now, these are not going to be loaded into the tool chest, right? These will always be red or the highlights are yellow. So if I know I'm always going to be marking up in blue and I'm always going to be marking up center lines, even if it's not my markup, I can click on it and either right click it and go down to set as default, or I can do it down here in the Properties tab, set as default when I'm clicked on it. And when I set it as my default, what's going to happen is now it's tied to my default tools in Bluebeam. So I always want a blue double line to come up when I use the default tool. Now when I go do that, it's putting in that blue line. Or I can set that thicker line as my default. Right click, set as default. And now whenever I place a new line, it'll be that thick blue line. So depending on what your needs are, you can customize these tools however you want. And then, like I mentioned before, you can add them to your own tool chest for whatever you need in your review. So a lot of times in roadway projects, we'll be looking at something on one page that we know appears on another page, right? So back to our navigating zone, our thumbnails. A great aspect of Bluebeam is this split document view, split vertical or split horizontal. So when I click that down at the bottom left, it'll open up two separate screens. I still have that up. So I've got this page that I've been looking at here, But let's say I want to just check, like before I make a comment, maybe it's addressed on one of these other pages. So is that 3rd Street? So maybe I was going to make a comment on this page, but the same location appears on this page. I can have both of these pages up at the same time, looking at both of them. So I can just confirm, like maybe my comment is already taken care of by a note that's on the construction plan, so I don't have to make that comment here. And if you have 2 screens, if you're using like a dual screen setup, you can actually drag this out and move this over to another window. And then to drag it back in, you just click on this, that gray square where it has the document name, click on that. And it's not letting me do it. Yeah, I'll just close out of it. But it'll snap back in there. So that's a great way to kind of save some time. You're not individually skimming through a bunch of sheets. You can pull up your second window, check something against another sheet, and then close that out and get back to what you were doing. That's pretty much all I got for our session here. I'm going to go back to the Studio tab, and the last thing I'll do before I finish my review is just set my status to finished, so everyone knows that I'm done with my markups, and we're ready to move on to the next phase of a project, or ready to transmit these to an LPA.